Hello and welcome to News Central Now, coming to you live from our studio in Nigeria. I am Benga Aborowa, and here are the top stories at this hour. The World Food Programme is to cut food rations for nearly 700,000 refugees and internally displaced persons in South Sudan. Kenya unveils firearms factory in KIAMBU County. And Cameroon investigates use of COVID-19 funds following allegations of financial embezzlement. We'll bring you all the details shortly. Nigerian army troops have reportedly stormed several communities in Benue State in the north-central part of the country as they go into search of suspected bandits who ambush soldiers. Reports indicate that 5 communities, Binde, Agidi, Gungo and Bonta in Konshisha local government council area, as well as Ulam in neighboring Gwe East, have been attacked by ground troops backed by helicopter gunships. Soldiers moved into the area after army authorities reported that marauding bandits had on Tuesday ambushed a Nigerian army logistics team on a reinforcement mission to quell communal clashes between Bonta in Konshisha and Obota in Oju local council area. The bandits reportedly carted away with a stockpile of military hardware, including a general-purpose machine gun and 2,000 rounds of ammunition and 28 million naira. They also abducted 2 soldiers. However, according to locals and other eyewitnesses, the army launched raids on the various farming communities within a 40-kilometer radius, burning houses, farmlands and food stores, while many families have been rendered homeless. Many of the residents have fled from the onslaught and are said to be seeking refuge in the bush. Joining us on the news is Samson Blair Luga, a lawyer and indigene of one of the stricken communities. Thank you very much for joining us on the news, Samson.
Thank you.
Now, what can you tell us about the raids conducted by the military as well as the scale of destruction from what you know?
Okay, thank you very much for having me. On the 7th of April, which was yesterday, men of the Nigerian Army troops supported by helicopter gunship raided towns in our community in Konshisha local government. They raided the Bonta, Seanyom, Binde, and all the border communities of Konshisha and Oju, belonging to the Shange tier of Konshisha local government. More than 200 houses were destroyed and unspecified number of persons killed and displaced. The attacks extended this morning to Aku, Amandi, Gungu, Agidi, Adoka, and other parts of Yoanya Council Ward, which are many kilometers and more than 20 kilometers away from the crisis zone. They destroyed over 500 houses in Gungu, including my own house and some public facilities. The council hall was also destroyed. They ransacked the market, bombed and destroyed everything in the market, including foodstuff and private homes of the citizens of Gungu and environs.
Now,
we are still looking for some of our family members who ran into the bush, and we are yet to ascertain their state right now. There is tension in the area, and there is apprehension that the military men may come back and finish the remaining families that are standing or the homes that are standing.
Now, Mr. Luga, from what you've described, it seems the response of the military authorities is quite disproportionate. But the military authorities are saying that the operations targeted bandits' hideouts in those areas. Is it not true that those communities have been harboring the bandits?
Well, it is unfortunate that the military authorities can churn out such lies and distort facts to suit their own purpose. I can tell you that there has been no single case of banditry in the whole of Konshisha local government. Not one single case of kidnapping or assault. What has been happening there has been a communal crisis over a piece of land between a kindred in Konshisha and another kindred in Oju. And the communities that are burning today, including my own hometown, are far away from the crisis zone. So what they are doing is in bad faith, and I think the earlier somebody calls them to order, the better for us. We have a very serious humanitarian crisis on our hands now as a result of this wanton destruction and disregard for law and order being perpetrated by men of the Nigerian army.
Now, are you aware of any friction between soldiers of Operation Wellstroke and their host communities in these areas?
No, I am not aware of any friction between soldiers and their host communities. I don't even know how or when they got into the warring communities that were fighting over a piece of land.
Now, finally, what's the Benue State government's official position on this? What have they done towards addressing this unpleasant situation? And like you rightly described, we have a humanitarian situation unfolding before our hands.
Well, presently, there has been no official response apart from a press release issued by the governor yesterday, where he told the people of Benue State that he received reports that 2 military personnel were missing in that axis. Until now, we have not had any condemnation from the governor or any member of his cabinet. Rather, his media team is blanking out the entire crisis by rather displaying pictures and narratives of how he's commissioning projects around. But the earlier he does something about this and the earlier the military high command does something about it, the better for us. We're already in a very serious crisis in Benue State as a result of herdsmen attacks on farming communities, and the rainy seasons are here already. If we don't do something about this, I tell you, my brother, it's going to be disastrous.
Now, finally, before I let you go, Mr. Samson Luga, you're a lawyer and community leader in Benue State. You did say you were directly affected as one of your properties was burnt. What is the future for civil and military relationships, and how do you plan to seek redress?
Well, I think history is just repeating itself in Benue State. If you remember very well, this kind of thing happened in Zakibia in 2001, when it was alleged that some military men were attacked or killed in
Apologies for that. I think we lost Mr. Samson Luga, a lawyer and indigene of one of the stricken communities in Benue State. News Central tried to reach army authorities to comment on the situation, and we couldn't get hold of. They weren't forthcoming with answers. We'll keep track and update you on that situation. Now, staying in West Africa, Nigeria has received a long-lost artifact from Mexico. The artifact, an Ife bronze sculpture and cultural symbol of Nigerian residents in the southwest region, was supposed to have been smuggled to Mexico but got intercepted by Mexican authorities. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs thanked the government of Mexico for his gesture of goodwill in returning the artifact after years of negotiations. Our correspondent Amadine Uyi tells us more.
The presentation of the artifact, an Ife bronze sculpture, came after years of negotiations with Mexican authorities. The Charge d'Affaires of Nigeria's mission in Mexico says it also came after several high-level diplomatic talks.
This artifact, will announce, is an Ife bronze sculpture that was intercepted by the Mexican authorities in 2016 at the Benito Juarez International Airport in Mexico City.
The artifact, like many others still lost in Europe, is a symbol of Nigeria's rich cultural heritage. Ministry officials say its price cannot be quantified.
They want our artifact because we have civilization, we have culture, and I'm very sorry to say that it's more dynamic than theirs. Like the cradle of civilization, they say, started in Egypt, but with the discovery of the Funa canoe that is more than 8,005 years 8,500 years ago. I think the cradle of civilization now is Nigeria. So what we have is priceless. There's no monetary value attached to it.
An ecstatic Minister of Foreign Affairs, while receiving the bronze sculpture, commended the efforts of the Nigerian mission in Mexico and the former ambassador for ensuring the artifact is returned back to its home of origin.
Due to his enterprise, and I would say also almost detective work, after a couple of years, and also his diplomatic skills, he was able to find out the origin of the work and the fact that it was stolen, and he engaged with Mexican authorities and was able to get the Mexican authorities, after proving that it was of Nigerian origin, to hand it over to the Nigerian people.
The recovery of the Ife bronze artifact raises questions about the security of other artifacts around the country. However, senior officials here present have assured that measures have been put in place to ensure that the theft of Nigeria's artifact becomes a thing of the past.
Now that we know the value, at least we know how much the whites appreciate these things. Of course, our museums are better secured now. I can vouch that hardly can anybody steal objects from Nigerian museums. I mean, in our recent time. That was not the case before.
The minister says the artifact will be presented to the Ministry of Information and Culture for onward presentation to Nigeria's Agency for Museum and Monuments. From Abuja, Amadin Uyi, News Central Television.
Now in East Africa, the governor of Sudan's West Darfur state says the number of people now known to have died during several days of clashes has risen to 132. Mohamed Abdallah Duma criticized the government's response, saying a promise of additional troops to help protect civilians had not been fulfilled. Members of the Masalit and Arab communities have fought since Saturday in and around the state capital, El Geneina, using guns and heavy weaponry. Late last year, United Nations peacekeepers withdrew from Darfur. People there have been called for notorious militias in Darfur to be disarmed. Staying in East Africa, the World Food Programme says it is cutting food rations for nearly 700,000 refugees and internally displaced persons in South Sudan due to significant funding gaps. A WFP representative and country director in South Sudan, Matthew Hollingworth, said the rations will be reduced from April. It will affect refugees and IDPs who will now receive 50% of a full ration, down from 70%. A full ration provides 2,100 kilocalories per person, and 50% is 1,050 kilocalories. The WFP also said it urgently needs $125 million for its food assistance operations for the next 6 months to provide food in sufficient quantities. Still in East Africa, Kenya has unveiled a firearms factory located at RUIRU in KIAMBU County. President Uhuru Kenyatta said the ammunition plant would manufacture small arms with plans to expand to mid-range firearms production in the next 5 years. Kenyatta said the plant has already shipped 12,000 assault rifles. He also said Kenya joined the arms manufacturing trade to reduce importation costs, adding that the desire to locally produce ammunition customized for Kenyan security operations necessitated the project. President Kenyatta added that he is optimistic Kenya will be a regional and international small and mid-range firearms supplier. He also said plans are underway to expand another ammunition plant in Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County. Kenyatta said 60% of the components used in producing the 12,000 assault rifles were sourced locally. Meanwhile, the Kenyan government has exempted tax on a donation of HIV drugs in the middle of a 3-month stalemate, leading to a shortage of antiretroviral drugs. The Finance Ministry explained that the exemption to the United States Development Agency's donation was made after the Health Ministry made it clear that millions of Kenyans who depend on the antiretroviral drugs were affected. Public hospitals had been given the drugs in rations to stretch the supply. Patients who got 6 months' supply of medication in the past can only now get weekly doses. The shortage has been caused by a tax standoff because USAID declined to import the drugs through the Kenyan Medical Supplies Association, citing corruption and mismanagement of the drugs. Joining us on the news is Rahab Waniki, Campaigns Manager, Kenya AIDS NGOs Consortium. Thank you very much for joining us, Rahab, on the news.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's my honor.
Let me start with this. What actually led to the dispute between the Kenyan government and USAID that resulted in the shortage of antiretroviral drugs?
Well, the Kenya government heavily relies on donor funding, Global Fund, PEPFAR, USAID. So Kenya government requested USAID for funding for actually the actual importation of drugs. And USAID used a private company called Chemonix that brought the drugs to Kenya, to the Mombasa port. Then, because it was a private company, there was no prior agreement on issues of tax exemption, because according to the law of Kenya, Kenya Medical Supply Agency is the only authorized agency that is supposed to supply for the Kenya government and county government. So that's where the standoff came about. Again, because paying taxes is Kenya's money, and so the law has to be followed. So that's where the standoff came about.
Now,
again,
sorry, Rahab, sorry to jump in there. The Kenyan Medical Supplies Authority, the USAID said they made allegations of corruption and said, no, we're not going to import through the Kenyan Medical Supplies Authority. Do you have any information if the Kenyan government has conducted any independent investigation into these allegations of corruption? Because it's serious.
So, yeah, the allegations are serious. Investigations have been done by Global Fund, actually a joint one by US government and Global Fund, and KEMSA was put on the spot. So I think it's on that basis that now USAID said, we cannot trust you to distribute the drugs. So it's a catch-22 for recipients of people in HIV, because on one hand, it's the law, on the other hand, people still need the drugs. So it's a catch-22 situation.
Now, a compromise seems to have been reached to resolve this impasse, but the United States has further issued a level 4 travel advisory against Kenya. What does this travel advisory portend for Kenyans in general?
I think they have their basis, because it is because Kenya right now, we are on third wave. Actually, it's very serious, more than the other waves, where the caseloads are increasing exponentially. The rates of infection are also going high. So it's not just the US government, UK government has also issued travel advisories against UK coming to Kenya or telling them to be cautious. So I think it's on the basis of COVID-19 cases. I don't see the connection between the impasse and the travel advisory, but that's my personal opinion, because everything is actually informed by the data the Kenya government provides.
Now, finally, how does Kenya try to avoid, what steps are they taking to try to avoid this sort of situation and become self-sufficient when it comes to antiretroviral drugs, to avoid this sort of situation in the future?
As civil society, we are working jointly with the government of Kenya, the National AIDS Control Council, to come up with a sustainability fund for HIV and tuberculosis, so that we don't keep borrowing donor funding. When your health system, 95% is supported by donors, you're actually at the mercy of someone else. So we are advocating for a sustainability fund for HIV and TB in this country, so that even the children who are born by HIV positive mothers do not convert, as in they do not become positive because they lack nevirapine, a very simple drug, but important drug, which is now also having a stock out in this country.
Many thanks for talking to us, Rahab Waniki. We do appreciate your insights on the subject matter.
Thank you so much.
Rahab Waniki there, campaigns manager, Kenyan AIDS NGOs Consortium. Now, staying in East Africa, Djibouti's President Ismail Omar Guelleh is expected to extend his two-decade rule of the tiny Horn of Africa nation as the country heads to the polls on Friday. Guelleh, who's 73 years old, is facing political newcomer Zakaria Ismail Farah, his only rival, after traditional opposition parties decided to boycott the election. A businessman specialized in the importation of cleaning products, Farah is seen by observers as unlikely to pose a significant challenge to the strongman who has been in power for 22 years. Guelleh wrapped up his campaign on Wednesday with a colourful final rally in a stadium packed with cheering supporters and traditional dancers. And now to Uganda, where police have rescued 29 Burundian girls and arrested 5 suspects involved in a human trafficking racket in the East African country. Police spokesperson for Criminal Investigations Directorate, Charles Twine, says the girls were rescued while in transit to other countries for sex trade. The police spokesperson says the suspects will be arraigned in court to answer to charges of human trafficking. Twine says trafficking of girls is one of the dehumanizing crimes associated with sexual and labor exploitation. Meanwhile, Egypt and Uganda have signed a memorandum of understanding on intelligence sharing to fight terrorism in Eastern and Northern Africa. Uganda's military intelligence chief, Abel Kandiho, said the agreement will see both countries share resourceful intelligence on a regular basis, which is key to combating terrorism and other crimes. Samir Sabel El-Degwi, head of an Egyptian delegation currently in Uganda, underscored the importance of cooperating between the two sides. The Egyptian delegation is in Uganda for a 4-day visit. And now to the southern part of the continent, where heads of states of the Southern African Development Community, SADC, are holding emergency talks in Mozambique on how to respond to the growing threat from militants in the northern part of the country. They also ordered the convening of a meeting of the Ministerial Committee of the regional body by the 28th of April that will report to the Extraordinary Organ Troika Summit on the 29th of April. Close to 750,000 people have been displaced over the last 3 years. Thousands fled Palma in the gas-rich Cabo Delgado province, where militants seized the town just over 2 weeks ago. The leaders may discuss the idea of deploying a joint military force, but Mozambique's President Filipe Nyusi suggested he would not welcome outside intervention. This is News Central now. Coming up on the news, Cameroon's President Paul Biya orders investigation into the use of COVID-19 funds. We'll bring you details of this and more when we return. Join us again. And now to a continuous coverage of the coronavirus pandemic on the African continent. In Central Africa, Cameroon's President Paul Biya has ordered an investigation into the use of COVID-19 funds following allegations of financial embezzlement. Last month, campaign group Human Rights Watch raised concern about what it called scant transparency in the management of funds, although transparency was a precondition for getting loans from the International Monetary Fund to tackle the pandemic. In April 2020, the health minister announced a $105 million response plan. The following month, the IMF approved $256 million emergency loan to help finance it. And in October, it approved a further loan of $156 million to finance the health system and help businesses and households affected by the pandemic. The International Monetary Fund now wants accountability on the use of these funds. And in East Africa, the Ugandan government has reported a significant increase in COVID-19 cases, warning that the country is nearing the start of the second wave. Several countries, including Kenya, are reinstating lockdowns to curb the surge in infections and hospitalization as they experience another wave of the pandemic. Statistics from the Ugandan Ministry of Health indicates that for the last 7 days, 222 cases were registered, higher than the 143 cases detected between March the 20th and 26th. This means the number of positive cases have increased from 0.7% to 1.1% in the same period. Now in Southern Africa, Botswana has adjusted its COVID-19 vaccination rollout by giving priority to people above the age of 75. This is due to the limited available doses and the need to protect the most vulnerable. Botswana's Director of Health, Malebogo Kebamboye, said the age group continues to register a high number of severe diseases and death in all districts of the southern African country. Kebamboye said the government realized that most people that had registered for the vaccine were younger people and the elderly were left behind. He said this is due to the fact that they are not familiar with technology or have no access to the internet. Now, away from the coronavirus pandemic, Namibia's Ministry of Health and Social Services has launched the Tuberculosis Preventive Therapy, TPT, under the campaign theme, Where is my TPT? The campaign was launched in the capital, Windhoek, and is aimed at combating tuberculosis, mostly amongst people living with HIV. The event was officiated by Health Executive Director Ben Nangombe, who said Namibia is classified as one of the countries with the highest tuberculosis burdens in the world. Nangombe said the ministry has considered ways of defeating the pandemic so that they can save people from the illness and dying. You're watching News Central now. Coming up in World Wrap, angry protests break out in Kyrgyzstan after a woman was abducted and killed in a case of bride kidnapping. More on this when we return. You're welcome back. French President Emmanuel Macron is expected to announce that one of the country's top colleges, the École Nationale d'Administration, will be shut down on the plans to boost social mobility. A degree from the ENA has been the passport to the upper echelons of French politics for generations. Its graduates include Macron himself and ex-President François Hollande and Jacques Chirac. But it has become the target of populist anger at perceived elitism. The entrance exams are notoriously tough, and the ENA's intake is dominated by students from privileged backgrounds. It admits fewer than 100 students a year who are fast-tracked into prestigious civil service jobs. Now, angry protests have broken out in Kyrgyzstan after a woman was abducted and killed in a case of bride kidnapping. Aizada Kanetkova was snatched on Monday by 3 men who pushed her into a car. It is believed that one of them wanted to marry her. Security footage showing the abduction spread widely on social media, but police could not track the vehicle. Kanatbekova's body was found in an abandoned car on Wednesday. A shepherd came across the vehicle in a field outside the capital, Bishkek, and raised the alarm. The young woman's kidnapper and suspected murderer was also found dead. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has released the latest update of its fiscal monitor report, which stated that in the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic, fiscal policy had reacted quickly and forcefully to the health emergency. The lifelines have saved lives and protected livelihoods. Fiscal support has also prevented more severe economic contractions and job losses than the world would otherwise have seen, including by easing financial stress when monetary and fiscal policies acted together.
The response to fiscal policy was unprecedented in speed and size. Governments provided fiscal support in a timely and decisive way. In the last 12 months, countries have announced $16 trillion in fiscal actions. In most countries, the fiscal response was an order of magnitude larger than the norm for business cycle fluctuations. That was fully justified as COVID-19 is a health emergency. It was crucial to financially enable health systems and to extend emergency lifelines to households and firms.
Now, in business, airline passenger traffic demand has dropped 74.7% globally as countries relaunch various travel restrictions to limit the spread of the coronavirus new variant. The International Air Transport Association, IATA, in its latest figures said that the decline compared to pre-COVID February 2019 was worse than the 72.2% slump recorded in January 2021. Airlines traffic in Africa dropped 68% in February 2021 versus 2 years ago, which was a setback compared to a 66.1% decline recorded in January compared to January 2019. February capacity contracted 54.6% versus February 2019, and load factor fell 20.5 percentage points to 49.1%. Now, joining us on the news is Olumide Ohuayo, an aviation consultant. Hello, good evening, Mr. Ohuayo. Thanks for joining us on the news. Hello?
Good evening, thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. Now, it's understandable that nations restrictions citizens everywhere with COVID-19 spikes occurring and new variants, but why the reciprocity between the Nigeria and the United Arab Emirates?
Yeah, what happened between the Emirates? The Emirates government went beyond the 72-hour test that the COVID test that was required, and introduced the rapid antigen test that will be taken at the airport 3 hours before departure. It was not only Emirates and KLM Airlines introduced those rules. And the Nigerian government asked them to reverse that it does not comply with the CTF protocol, that they need the approval of the CTF to have such in place. At the point, KLM complied and they returned to flight. Emirates was about complying, then they came up and said that the government refused, and all they would do because they were bringing in Nigerian passengers and not taking Nigerian passengers out of the country. And from there, I think the two governments could just find a common ground, and the airlines stopped operating flights into Nigeria. But also remember, before that, the Emirates government had banned Nigeria from flying to a third country. So if you have to go to Dubai, you must fly direct from Lagos or Abuja into Dubai. You cannot fly on any other airline to a third country into Dubai.
But we do know the importance of tourism between these two countries. There's a high volume of Nigerians that do travel for business and tourism to the United Arab Emirates. Do you see the governments of these two nations resolving this issue anytime soon?
Well, it might take some time because the American government are putting their foot on the ground that the rapid antigen test would be taken at the airport. And the Nigerian government saying that you cannot do that on our soil. You would have to go and do that you can do that on your soil and not here. And if you have to do something like that here, we would have to put the structures in place and must be approved. And the reason for the Emirates said that for those traveling, I don't know, about 10 of them are coming with a negative test result. They say about 3 to 4 of them come back positive, which was their reason. Now, coming to the tourism, the two countries are affected. Yes, Nigerians travel there a lot, but the Emirates have very juicy. The Lagos-Abuja route is almost the most profitable for Emirates. So they also have something at stake. It's not only on one part.
Okay. Now, it was expected that with the rollout of vaccines, the world will open up and we'll witness more travel, which we haven't seen much of that. What else do you think should be done? There's talks of vaccine passports similar to the yellow card that Nigerians and other Africans use when traveling.
If it's specifically Nigeria, I think we should just go ahead and begin to enlighten people to take the vaccine, because the vaccine is the future. International travel will depend on that vaccine. And also, you remember that if you know that there's a passport coming up under the vaccine passport issue, and with that, you can read the international travel. For now, the international travel is a bit difficult. Countries are still locking up, especially in Europe. They're locking up. They're shooting. They're putting those protocols and barriers in place. Consider that they are already having the second and third wave, despite having the vaccination in place. So we just going to have to continue with the vaccination. Once this process will begin to strengthen the airlines, so that when at the time the international travel picking up the 2022. Luckily for us, we have facility for airlines who have indicated interest to start operation. The domestic flight is picking up, really good. I think we can use that to start nurturing and strengthening the airlines depending when the wishes for the international flights will start. But before then, we just need to continue on that. Continue to put the vaccination, get more of the buses for Nigerians, the frontline workers, airlines, and whoever needs to travel. Because I think the way forward.
Thank you very much for talking to us on News Central now, Mr. Olumide Ohunaya, an aviation expert. Now, the New Development Bank, or NDB, formerly called BRICS Bank, has approved $1 billion emergency loan for the Republic of South Africa to support government efforts to contain the economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The funds will help finance the creation of employment opportunities, particularly under the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program that aims to create and support about 700,000 jobs in the public sector. The NDB, which serves the so-called BRICS nation, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, approved another $1 billion emergency loan for South Africa in June 2020 to help the country overcome the health impact of the pandemic. Kenya and the United States are holding virtual talks that could lead to a signing of a free trade agreement. This was confirmed in a statement on Thursday by Betty Maina, Kenya's Cabinet Secretary of Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise Development. Maina said she discussed with Catherine Tai, the U.S. trade representative, following up on the FTA negotiations that have been ongoing since last year. The two officials underlined the need for Kenya and the U.S. to be guided by a robust trade policy that will promote the mutual interest of the majority of the Kenyan and American people. The recent spate of attacks in Mozambique by terrorists have halted gas projects in Palma and other rich gas deposit areas worth $60 billion undertaken by Western majors like Total, ExxonMobil, Chevron, amongst others. But the United States Export-Import Bank ignored warnings of security risk and is funding the project in the gas-rich country with a $4.7 billion loan. Surprisingly, more than 70% of the population have been classified as multi-dimensionally poor by the United Nations Development Programme. However, it has been suggested that the country explores other areas of development. You're watching News Central now, where return will bring you more news on our bulletin. Do stay with us.
And in sports, Nigeria's striker Kelechi Iheanacho received yet another accolade after his goal against Burnley was voted Leicester City's goal of the month of Albion. And FIFA has rejected Zamalek's alleged $250,000 compensation settlement with Ghanaian striker Benjamin Acheampong. The world governing body has ordered the five-time African champions to pay the Ghanaian $1 million within 30 days as instructed by the Court of Arbitration for Sports back in December 2020. Acheampong revealed last month that his former agent conspired with Zamalek to agree on a settlement of $250,000 instead of an amount of $1.1 million. But the FIFA's disciplinary committee has rejected the settlement package and awarded the full cost to the North African giants. 3 months ago, the CAS ruled that the five-time African champions must pay the 30-year-old around $1.1 million after finding that the player had been forced into breaking his contract by the club's actions. And moving over to Europe, German Bundesliga champions Bayern Munich have confirmed that 32-year-old centre-back Jerome Boateng will leave when his contract expires at the end of the season. But the decision has sparked obvious tensions behind the scenes. The news was confirmed by the club's sporting director Hassan Salihamidzic. Bayern have already signed France centre-back Dayo Upamecano from Bundesliga rivals RB Leipzig for the 2021-2022 season, effectively hastening Boateng's departure. And the German-born Ghanaian's contract with the Bavarians ends this summer after 10 years with the club. And Boateng joined Bayern Munich in 2011 from Manchester City and has won 21 trophies during his time in Germany. And lastly, in boxing, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury have multiple offers to stage their world title fight, and promoter Eddie Hearn is confident as ever about finalizing a deal. And Britain's rival champions have signed contracts ahead of an undisputed world title fight, but a period of 3 weeks was set to reach an agreement on the location and a venue for a huge summer showdown. And we're supposed to hear from Eddie Hearn, but then of course I will look forward to that heavyweight bout, and I will see who gets to win that one. But that wraps up the sports segment. On the news now, I am Udoka Njoko.
And up next is entertainment news.
Now, this conversation started 2 nights ago. I thought it was just a joke, but, you know, getting to the office and I read about it, it's really serious. And I know that you're very interested in this. So tell us, what exactly is going on? Quickly.
Yeah, I saw the story, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
And I tried my best to, read as much as I could. But I didn't catch the album on any streaming platform, because I went on Apple Music yesterday and I was looking to see whether the album was still there.
Same here.
But I couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So I might not be able to speak to whether the songs were exactly Wizkid songs.
Yeah.
Because following what was being said online yesterday on Twitter,
okay,
I think he rearranged and titled his own songs.
From my
I don't think it was exactly.
It wasn't exactly the same songs. It's not the same sound, but it practically used the same titles. Attracting. Yes. Same way, we had this Burna Boy Kanye thing.
Burna Boy,
yeah,
Kanye, yes.
The single was Ye, but their Kanye album was actually Ye as well. So it's the same thing that happened here.
All right. So if that is the only thing that happened, and there wasn't like a duplication or the making of replica songs or adaptation of Wizkid songs, I think it is permissible in law to, use the same title as maybe any famous person. And, interestingly, we're in a digital age.
Yeah.
We consume music digitally, and people are looking for ways to gain advantage on, things that are doing well already. So, according to Nigerian copyright law, and maybe the copyright law, universal copyright law, there isn't any exclusivity when it comes to titling your works.
Right.
Maybe titling your songs, 1, 2, 3, 10 songs can have the same title.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that there is any infringement on the title
itself.
But yes, so in this case, we're looking at 2 interesting legal concepts. We're looking at trademarks and we're looking at copyright law. So, and we will be looking at trademarks because the essence of trademarks is that when you build a reputation, you are in pole position to benefit.
Right.
You and I know that globally, the name Wizkid means something in the music industry.
Absolutely.
So that's like top 3, top 5 African talents in 2021.
Right.
So yes, and that name was cultivated on the strength of hard work,
right?
Connecting with audience, and there's been some kind of consistency as well.
Yeah.
Wizkid has been special for like 9-10 years.
Right.
And he's been able to build that goodwill where his name sells tickets, arenas, sells products. He's doing a lot of merchandising, endorsement deals. When he puts his name in a song, the song is definitely going to get traffic.
Okay.
Of course, you've heard about the Whiskey FC.
Yeah. So are you saying now that for him to lash on to that brand train, is that a crime?
Well, I wouldn't call it a crime. It could have some elements of, there could be some criminal angle to it, you know, but in this sense, I think it's more of a civil action.
A civil action.
Which is, yes, which is encroached, is infringed, is desecrated on the trademark of Mr. Ayo Balogun,
which is
popularly known as Whiskey. And now Whiskey will have recourse to legal mechanisms. Already we've heard from Whiskey's manager, and they've already taken certain steps. They've already made sure that those songs were kicked out of streaming platforms.
Yeah.
But again, they still have other legal avenues. They can also go after anyone who has supported that infringement.
That infringement.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have much time on the show tonight, but let's come back to Nigeria now, right?
Yeah.
How much impact do you think this is going to have on Wizkid if this goes to court, or if there's a case? How much impact is going to have on the young artist himself?
Yeah, like I said earlier, you have to count the cost. Is it going to be worth your time? You want to spend money on legal fees, going after maybe seemingly a nobody. But again, on the flip side, as a creator, you want to ensure that you do everything you can to protect your intellectual property assets. Yeah. Because if Whiskey and his team let this slide, other people can also try to perpetrate the same kind of behavior.
Yeah.
So
it's more of a.
I would think that. Yeah. So I would think that they should move against everybody involved if they think it is worth their time, and then they should get all the money that was made, try to get it back. If indeed that money was made, and it is even unbelievable that this was left to go on for so long.
For so long, since October 2020.
So I don't know, maybe the Whiskey team, they were not policing the intellectual property assets enough
enough to discover.
But again, this is a cautionary tale. A lot of people would learn from this.
All right, man. Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so much, Akemi. And I want to say,
having me.
Next time I call you, I will definitely get your name right. All right? Have a great night.
Thank you. I appreciate you. You too.
And that's all on the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. See you again next time.
That was News Central's entertainment editor, Corey Brown, speaking to Akinyemi on the saga of Impersonator from the Wizkid Made in Lagos album on Apple Music and Amazon. And that's all on the news at this hour, but before we go, let's bring you a recap of our top stories. The World Food Programme says it is cutting food rations for nearly 700,000 refugees and internally displaced persons in South Sudan due to significant funding gaps. Kenya has unveiled a firearms factory located at RUIRU in KIAMBU County. And we told you that Cameroon's President Paul Biya has ordered an investigation into the use of COVID-19 funds following allegations of financial embezzlement. Remember to follow us on social media. We're at News Central TV. You can also catch up with our news and programs. Just download the News Central TV mobile app on Play Store and iOS. You can also watch us live on Star Times Channel 274. Many thanks for watching. I am Benga Aboroa.